Robert, I appreciate you jumping on the podcast. I know we initially met at She Leads Tech, and the speech, I forgot the title of it, but everything you said resonated with me, and I agreed 100%. And I just made a beeline. I'm like, okay, I got to introduce myself because I loved everything that you said. But again, I appreciate you jumping on this episode. How's it going?
It's going well. I actually was at a TFA dinner, well, really a graduation where teachers who were in the classroom for the past 2 years graduate into Teach for America Colorado alumni. And at that point, they can either decide to go back into the classroom or they can, go out into the business world and really take their talents there. I was able to give a nice closing speech and really it focused on community, bringing your authentic self to work, to wherever you go each and every day. And that the people in this room are going to be part of your community, a larger community in Colorado, a larger community across the United States, and that not everybody's talents are equal. I was not somebody who could be in a classroom, and I thank those people who could teach tremendously. Thank you for anybody who's taught. I couldn't do it. But when I was asked to join the board, I was like, yes, because I really am passionate about trying to close the gap of the educational inequity. And that's really what they're doing. So these teachers go work in some of what I would say, the marginalized schools. When they come out of college, we help locate them, place them in schools, and they're dealing with some of the underrepresented communities. And it's tough sometimes because they may not have parents who come to the parent-teacher conference because they're working all the time. So there's different things, but I really wanted to make sure that they understood that they have a community, they have people they can talk to, they can reach out to me, other board members, and they could do different talents. Some people might want to fundraise. Some people might want to work on grants. Some people might want to go into politics and try to reverse some of the changes that have gone in to change some of the DEI back to DEI is now, I guess, in vogue again when it's now out of vogue, but work on those types of things.
I appreciate that insight on what you've been doing recently there. And I definitely support that effort. I think education is extremely important. My wife is an educator. She teaches at Metro State University and teaching the future teachers of America on reading, how to teach kids how to read. So my kids are they're reading 1 million books. It's crazy. When I was their age, no, I wouldn't even touch books. But just to provide a background for the audience, can you provide a quick overview of your background?
I'm currently the CIO of a healthcare company, a world services company that has healthcare products. That's our division. So probably 75% of all insured Americans run through our software in some form or fashion. My journey to where I am now was very non-traditional. Went to college, have a degree in political science. Yes, political science with a minor in international relations. I had no plans of being in any technology job. I was going to go get a job, go to law school, and then go work for the IMF or the World Bank, helping third world countries with development loans, getting funding, helping build out their infrastructure. Somewhere along the way, somebody was like, hey, you're pretty good here at doing spreadsheets and all of this stuff. You mentioned there's some tech database that can help us. Go learn it. And I went and learned it and was like, oh, I guess I have a knack for this, and kind of progressed. But I wouldn't be here without somebody who actually believed in me, saw my talents, because I never wanted to manage people. I was like, I'm going to be an individual contributor, keep my head down, work, because managers are always the first people to get fired during RIF. And my boss was like, look, you have a good way with people. You like to teach. You like to help people along in their careers. You'd be a good manager. Nope, I'm not doing it. And then one day he said, hey guys, I'd like to introduce you to the new manager. And that pretty much started my career.
You mentioned a lot of great things there, Robert. The first one, though, we in the industry tend to say that we come from an untraditional background. So I'm going to push a little bit. What is traditional?
Traditional, at least when I get people applying for positions, they've got a CS degree. They went for IS degree. They're like, hey, I studied computer science. I did an internship. I've done this. I built hardware. There are people who were, that was what their focus was really getting into computers, getting into IT, getting into cybersecurity. My focus is really on people who have, and I think we talked about this, the life skills that they can interchange, people who can play nice, people who are respectful, people who understand the different dynamics and personalities, people who've worked in different industries. Like, look, I used to work in customer service. Well, great. You understand how people think. That would be good to be a PM because you can read the room and gauge people's visual cues and those types of things. So that's when we talk about traditional, those are the folks that I went to school for this. This is what I want to do. This is what I've always wanted to do. And, you know, there's a lot of those folks.
Yeah, I appreciate your insight, but I just wanted to kind of push back because I definitely understand that it's about traditional and non-traditional. One of my most recent episodes, I interviewed, her name was Kylie, coming from the music industry, and she said the same thing, that I come from an untraditional background. And you come from a background that has value in IT and cyber. I'm trying to change that vernacular because, like you mentioned, we all have this skill set, no matter what profession, even transitioning professionals, legal, even the medical field, could add value into our space there. But the other thing that you mentioned is life skills. I definitely want to, shelve that for later in the conversation, because we'll definitely get back to that.
Perfect.
So the other thing you had mentioned is the individual that helped you see something that maybe you didn't see in yourself, right? Nope, I don't want to be a manager. I said the same thing during my time in government. I'm like, nope, I'm not doing that because I need all these skill sets that I lack, and I don't want to fail the teams that I'm wanting to lead. And I remember my manager at the time, when he wasn't actually a manager, kind of a mentor, a colleague. And he asked me, I love your perspective, but do you think any of those people out there, he was pointing outside about his office, do you think they're thinking that way? Probably not. He's like, yeah, put it in. And I never did. I never applied to be a manager. But walk me through, how did you develop mentorships? I think are key in any industry, and especially IT and cyber. How did you develop mentorships throughout your career to help you kind of navigate it?
I think I've always had different mentors. One of them that I always laugh about and I never think about was the one that I would see when I'd come home from college. The one that I sat up under for years. My dad. He was just a quiet person who went about his business, wasn't about the fanfare, but he was always about helping other people. And he would always say, with responsibility, you've got to give back. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah. He said, in everything that you do, always make sure that you appreciate the people who've helped you get there. Because he said, one day you'll go up the ladder and one day you may be coming down the ladder and you'll see those same people again. And he said, always be respectful, regardless if it's the guy that's cleaning the floor or the CEO. He's like, it doesn't matter. A title doesn't make somebody better than somebody else. It's just their title. And it was one of the things that really stuck with me and I've tried to take. And most of the people that have been my mentors have always kind of groomed me for you've got to keep a level head. You can't get the big head, as people say. As people go up the ladder, people go, well, I'm too good now to sweep the floors, and I'm too good to roll up my sleeves, and I'm too good because I'm the guy now. No, they were always like, look, you shouldn't ask somebody to do something that you wouldn't. And that's been one of the things that stuck with me. But there's always been somebody I could just go and say, hey, I'm stuck. I don't understand this. And they're not going to give you the answer. They're going to give you stories of how they did something similar, or they're going to ask you, well, if you had the opportunity to do this again, how would you handle the situation, knowing what you now know? And we'll talk and we'll walk through it, and they'll be like, well, see, now you have a path forward. You talked yourself through the problem. And that's one of the good things. And then when I mentor people, it's really looking at what do they want to do? Where do they want to go? And how do I help them see like the hidden talents, like the little jewels and little nuggets that they have that they don't see because they're heads down doing this. And nobody sees that and a lot of people don't think you pay attention. Like you don't pay attention to them because, oh, you're the manager, you're too busy. And you're just like, no, I'm looking at everybody. And there are certain people that you're like, oh, they have an intrinsic quality that they don't really know, but they just bring calm to a room, or that person is always happy. Regardless of the situation, they're bringing joy or peace or one of those other things. And you're like, hey, how do you build that? How do you build that into your career? How do you use your natural God-given talents to do what you do at work? And so it's the things where mentors are always going to be around, and you've got to find one. If you don't have one, I would suggest anybody seek somebody out. Could be a friend. It could be somebody you met months ago. But I think everybody needs somebody who they can just talk to, bounce ideas off of, that is going to be non-judgmental. Most mentors don't have any skin in the game. They're like, look, I'm here to help you. And you come to me with what you have, and I'll try and help you. And it's not scripted, and it's not, well, give me a whole bunch of questions and I'll answer them. It's free-flowing conversations. And I think that's what really makes a good mentor. And those are the ones that I've had that would never give me the answer, would never solve my problem for me, but would really make me walk through a variety of scenarios, would make me go, well, how would you handle this differently? Okay, put yourself in the place of XYZ employee. How did that tone come across? And you're like, oh, I guess, yeah, I didn't think of it that way. And so they just give you a different perspective.
Yeah, those are the best type of mentors, right? That guide you, put those guardrails there so you can ultimately find the answer in your unique experience or challenge that you're going through. But do comments as you're discussing that, Robert. How do people find mentors? Because a lot of people ask me, they might use social media and LinkedIn to say, hey, I reached out to these people, but I get crickets. Or the one thing that I always tell people, I'm an introvert, which people don't believe I am. But you put me in a room with IT and cyber professionals, yeah, I'll go talk to you. But you put me in front of lawyers or doctors, I'm in the corner sipping my water and not engaging with anyone. So what advice would you give people on how to find a mentor? And obviously your parents should be part of your mentorship family, if you will. But outside of family, how do you go about trying to find one, especially in our industry?
I think it's because our industry, and especially here in Denver, is so small. It's that if you ask somebody and say, hey, do you have a mentor? And they may say, hey, no. Or if they say yes, you're like, well, how did you get that mentor? And do you think they would be open to mentoring me? And they may say, here, just reach out, tell them I referred you. And it goes from, and it kind of goes from there. I have probably 3 or 4 people that I've mentored. And some people have just come up and said in LinkedIn or shot me an email and said, hey, are you open to providing any mentoring? And I'm always like, yep, I'm always ready to provide mentoring. I always love to share. And sometimes you just may not know. And I would tell people, be bold and just ask and say, hey, are you open to mentor? And if I'm not, I may say, oh, well, what are you looking for? And it might be, I just want somebody to help me through this. And I think a lot of the times we make a mistake of going, well, my mentor has got to be in the same profession that I'm in or in the same job function that I'm in. No, they don't have to be. They're just people who are like an old sage. And I would say they have life experience. And that's what they're trying to impart into you is life experience. They're not going to say, well, when you put your hand on the stove, did it burn it? Yes, it did. Well, don't put your hand on the stove again. That would be the next thing.
Right.
But they don't always have to be in there. I had somebody who was an attorney. I had somebody who was a congressman. As a mentor, I had a professor that was a mentor. I had one of my bosses. He ended up being my mentor. And I've also had somebody who was a peer that was my mentor. And each one of them has provided me a different perspective. And they met me where I happened to be at that time, which I thought was great. They weren't trying to go, hey, we want to put you in this type of role, or if you're thinking about doing this type of role, these are the things you need to do. They're like, no, I just want to meet you where you are and help you become good, solid, confident where you are so that people will see that. And then the next role will come or whatever, but they'll see that you're confident in what you're doing here and not worry about tomorrow or tomorrow's tomorrow. Focus on the present, right. Focus on the here and now.
You know, that's an interesting point about typically what I do when people reach out to me is, okay, I'm trying to look at my network within the industry, talk to this person. If they're looking into a speciality of cyber or IT that I'm not familiar with, I'm like, no, I can't help you, but take a look at this individual. But the thing that you shared is it doesn't have to be in IT and cyber. So that's something I'm going to be a little bit more cognizant about and provide that feedback to whoever reaches out to me. So moving on, so you get your manager role. Where did you go from there when your boss was seeing something in you that you might not have seen in yourself? So you're in this role. How did that go? And then what were the next steps as you're advancing in your career?
I've learned a few things. That taking somebody who is really competent technically and putting them into management is it usually doesn't go well. And it did not go well at all. It spectacularly burned down. But it kind of had to happen because I really didn't know what I was doing. And he knew I really didn't know what I was doing, but he wasn't going to, like he used to always say, I'm not going to give you the cheat sheet for the test. I will help you, but I'm not going to give you the answer key. I'm like, what? What do you mean? I'm asking for help. And he said, I know. Well, try it again and you'll get better at it. Try it again and you'll get better at it.
Hey.
And each iteration, he's like, you have to fail. You have to understand what it's like to fail, to understand, okay, this is what I need not to do, or this is what I learned from fail. I learned that you can be in charge and you can be the boss. And I was kind of in charge, but I wasn't the boss. And what I mean to say is I wasn't the buck stops with me. It was always, they didn't get this done. They didn't get that done. They didn't get that done. They didn't get that done. And my boss is
Yeah.
like, well, why didn't they get that done? Oh, no, you're their manager. That's what you're supposed to figure out. Why are they not getting this stuff done? He's like, yes, if the team fails, you fail. And I was like, oh, so, okay. And it took me a long time to understand that because it's always you're like, well, I'm doing a great job. I'm getting my stuff done. Yes, but you're running a team. That's the whole point of the team. So like the first 30 days, it was chaotic. I flamed out. And he was like, well, what do you need to do to fix it? I was like, what do you mean? What do I need to do? He said, what do you need to do to fix it? So, well, I should probably go to some classes, read some books. And he's like, those are all great things to do. So let me know when you finished your first book. What? I was just throwing stuff out there. I didn't know. But what he did is he held me accountable. And that was one of the things that is very different, is that he held me accountable not only for my performance, but for the performance of the team and the improvements in performance of the team. I was like, oh, man. And so I really learned how to listen. I really learned how to not treat everybody as the same person. Kind of like, and this is before I had kids. Now that I have kids, I understand that you can't discipline all of your kids the same way. One child, you can say, I'm very disappointed, and they will cry in the room and think they're the worst child ever. The other child, you can say, I'm disappointed, and they'll just laugh and go, okay. You're like, okay, you have to have stuff taken away. We got to take stuff out of your room. Wait, because they like gadgets. So you kind of learn, but you also learn what motivates certain people. And you understand how certain people you have to kind of speak sternly to, and they need to hear the no BS. Like, I just want to hear it straight. If I stink, I stink. Other people, you can't say you're terrible because they will crumble
They
and
internalize
will not
it.
recover. So
Right.
you have to understand how that goes. And that was one of the roughest lessons I learned. And then the other one was
Yeah,
when I actually had to fire somebody that I worked with forever. That was the worst. The worst. And I was like, I can't do this. Part of the job. I said, I've worked with this person for 10 years. I know their kids. I know their
wow.
family. He's like, I get it, but part of the job. So I had to go in there, give him the thing, and then pretty much boo-hoo back at my desk because it was just, I'm like,
Mm,
oh gosh, that's devastating. But there's a human
for
side of
sure.
it, and then there's the business side, and sometimes you have to separate the two. That took a while for me to learn as well.
Robert, the way you started the conversation about, taking somebody who's technical and putting them in a management role. So my personal opinion when it comes to our industry in cyber and IT, I think that's why we get data breached, all these companies, because we value more of the technical experience and, certifications or the traditional CS degrees. And we're not looking at more of the macro perspective of how leaders manage being empathetic. The other key word you said is you listened based on what you learned. That is, part of the ongoing issue that we struggle with here in cybersecurity. So I love the fact that you're highlighting that, and I'm not the only one thinking it, right?
No, it happens all the time. Sometimes the most technical person needs to stay the most technical person, and you need to bring in somebody who can manage very smart technical people.
So where does that come from? Because I've seen it in all previous roles that just because you're good technically doesn't mean that you can be good at leading people in different technical capabilities. So why do we keep on doing that?
I think it's our way of rewarding people who are very good at what they do. We're like, hey, we want you to be the SME of this team. You can teach this team. You can guide this team. You can raise this team up. You can make like a super team. because you're the super smart guy that knows all this technology. And if anything ever happened, we could always count on you and could call on you. But because they're the superstar, they're doing all the work anyway, and they're not really taking the time to develop the people around them because they don't have that kind of sense of community like I did. I was like, I'm just making sure you submit your timesheet. No, that's not part of it. Part of it is building the team up. It's, finding out what people are good at, helping do all that stuff. I've done it. I've done it a couple times and throughout my career, and it went about as well as mine did. It spectacularly flamed out. And I was like, I don't know why I thought this would end up any better. And, I spent a lot of time talking with the person and mentoring the person, and they just were like, I can't, this is not who I am. This is not what I want to do. Okay. And, sometimes you should listen to people when they say, yeah, this is not what I want to do. And other times, like with me, you're like, all right, well, let's give it a shot. Let's see. But he just kind of knew. And sometimes you just know intrinsically working with that person for long enough, you're like, yeah, you've got that spark. You could make that good transition. But it takes a long time to be able to read the tea leaves and get to that point. Like 20 years worth of long time.
So you learn from this failure, which again, I think our society, we don't like to be vulnerable and fail. There's a podcast in my rantings in LinkedIn. I love the X-Files, growing up with the X-Files.
Oh.
And David Duchovny, who played Fox Mulder, he actually has a podcast called, I forgot, something dealing with failure. I'll make sure to link it in the show notes. But he talks to primarily Hollywood or his network on failure and how we need to embrace that. And that's how, like you mentioned, it's like you failed, but you learn from that. And I think as a society, we struggle with that. We think that we're vulnerable, that, well, I failed at that, I failed at this. But that's riding a bike, walking. When we're little kids, how many times, we would have to ask our parents, how many times did we fall, right? We failed so many times. So now we're on bikes, running and doing all that fun stuff. What is the next role? Do you stay with the same company? How does your leadership evolve from that initial kind of first step?
Oh my gosh. I always joke to people that, I'm the kingmaker. And they're like, what do you mean by the kingmaker? I said, I like to develop people that can go out and do other things. So like my big thing was, okay, who am I going to develop to take my role? Because that was my thing. I was like, please, somebody take my job. Anybody take this job. You can have it. And I would always joke, but I'm like, no, I really want to help develop people. And I would tell people, I'm like, look, I want you to be successful even if you don't stay on my team. Because if you're successful and I plant you someplace else within the company, the organization is going to do better. If you go off and go someplace else and you go there and you're successful, you're going to hopefully plant other people that are going to be successful and you'll make that company successful. And that's kind of what I started doing is I started really developing my team to take on other roles. And a lot of them were technical and, some of them became just really good technical SMEs, but I would bring in people that I would say, hey, I'm looking to groom somebody to take my role, or, hey, I'm looking to groom somebody to lead this team and this team. And I started doing that and I got, well, you got this team now. What? Well, you did a good job with this one team. So you got this team, then you got this team, and then you got this team. And I'm like, oh my God. I used to always say, no good deed goes unpunished. And that's just kind of how it works. You succeed at something and somebody sees it and goes, well, hey, you did it for this group. Maybe you can replicate what you did here and become successful here. And then you get another team and another team. And before you know it, you have a large organization, but you can't run it without people that are and I wouldn't even say like-minded, but without people that have that same kind of passion, that same kind of vigor to not just manage, but to grow and develop talent. And that's where I think, a lot of times people just get stuck because they're like, well, the only way I'm ever getting up the ladder is if the guy ahead of me, quits or dies, and doesn't look like he's going to do either one of those anytime soon. But there are times where you just have to go and be open to other opportunities. That was one of the things that my mentor told me. He said, Robert, you've got to just be open. I was like, what does that mean? He said, sometimes your path is not always going to be up. Sometimes you're going to have to make a lateral move before you go up. There's going to be no more pay. There's not going to be a pay increase. You might get a lot more work, but sometimes you're going to have to be open to do something different. And that's how I ended up where I am now. I just said, oh, I'll try something new. I'll be open. That's how I ended up here.
I definitely love that, Robert, because I think a lot of people, it tells me about your character that you want to build people up. You want them to replace you, because a lot of managers, a lot of people in my network, they've said, oh, my boss is horrible. They're trying to keep me down. And ultimately I want to take their job, but they're like, nope, it's not going to happen. Right. And they it's almost protecting their kingdom, if you will. So that really tells me a lot about your character. Whoever wants my seat, I'll help them out, and so they can learn and grow. So I definitely love that perspective.
Yeah, I have somebody that I've been growing for, we've worked together probably 15 years now. And he's kind of always been my number two. So I move up, he moves up, I move up, he moves up. And I'm like, well, one day you can have the seat if you want it. And he's like, I'm like, come on. And he just always says that he doesn't want it. He's like, it's a lot of work. I said, everything's a lot of work. There's no job that's not a lot of work. And I think that's the misnomer that people think, oh, you're a C-suite guy. You just fly around in jets all day. And no, it's a lot of work. Everything is a lot of work. It's just different work, but we all work.
You hit the nail on the head. It's different work. So let's transition to a different topic here, Robert. Let's talk about the phrase or the word of the millennia until quantum computing officially starts there. Generative artificial intelligence.
No.
What are your thoughts on that from a societal perspective, and then now kind of in the weeds for IT and cyber? Is it good, bad for those two kind of parts?
So I will answer this in two different ways.
Sure.
I think it's good because it's going to provide new opportunities for people and different opportunities for people. So when people are like, cyber is going to kill 1 million, then going to kill 1 million jobs, agentic AI, blah, 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 blah. But they don't look and see, yes, but with all this power and cooling, somebody's got to build these data centers. Somebody's got to be the electrician who knows how to work on this power. Somebody's got to figure out how to cool all this stuff. Somebody's got to build these computers. Somebody's got to rat and stack these data centers and manage them and all of this stuff. So there you go. We've now just created a whole new industry of people just building data centers all over the place. Power, sewer, all of that stuff that has to get done. Now, I think it is going to help us as long as and I always tell people, I said, it's not going to replace people. There's always got to be a human in the loop, but it can augment you to get rid of some of the mundane things. So I use AI pretty much every day to spell check my emails and to just do, hey, provide me a summary of the day and let me know what things I have to do tomorrow and what are the key topics that I need to be prepared for meetings, blah, blah, blah. And it'll go through and it'll look at everything I did on Teams and my emails, and it'll kind of give me a summary. So I'm like, oh, well, I forgot about that meeting, and I forgot I had to get this presentation ready. But it's also making people lazy. Extremely lazy. Because now we don't even want to read. We don't even want to spell check. You're just like, I don't know, whatever, please reply to this email. Did you read what it said? Because I've seen some that I know it was written by AI because it says, greetings, kind sir. I'm like, greetings, kind sir. So I had to tell people, hey, please read your emails before you send them out. But I think it's making some people lazy because they don't want to do the research themselves. They're taking everything that the great AI says for granted. I don't have a fear of the agents taking over the world and, us going to iRobot or Terminator. But
Skynet.
yeah, but I do have a fear of, with all these new agentic models where the agents are doing work and talking to other agents and they're working back and forth in the background and we have no visibility into what they're doing, that scares me. I'm like, basically we just let the fox in the hen house and said, have at it. We still got a fence around it, so we're good. But you don't know what they're doing because they're chatting and they can just go off, they can go, as we say, they can just go off the range and just, you're like, oh my gosh, what just happened? Because we don't know. We just haven't gotten to that point. And that scares me. So kind of, I would say it's very difficult because we're at very different phases. But I think when applied correctly, it can be a blessing. When abused, it can be a curse. And like I said, I think people are just getting intrinsically, not maybe lazy is not the word, but we're not really doing the research that we used to do. Because now you're just like, build me a PowerPoint. Build me an Excel spreadsheet that does all this stuff. So now you're like, hey, can you do this in Excel? No. Because I haven't done it in Excel in 10 years, 5 years. I just had this bot do it for me. So, I think sometimes we're losing some skills that we used to have. Being able to do X lookups and pivot tables and all this stuff. And we just said, do this. And now I don't have that skill set anymore because I haven't used it. So we're not exercising our muscle memory.
Yeah, I don't mind if agentic AI can do pivot tables. I never learned. So yeah, it could do that for me. I guess one of the biggest questions that I get from students or transitioning professionals, will AI replace me? I think you already kind of answered that. But there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt when it comes to its overall capabilities. But when it comes to potentially replacing teams, I think I read, might have been Bloomberg or Wall Street Journal. It was kind of a video on YouTube that a lot of Silicon Valley companies are stopping their hiring of software engineers and now leveraging what they have in-house, which one of my former buddies, do more with less. He's like, I never understood that. That's doing less with less. How can we do more with less? But that is kind of what is happening. So when these students or transitioning professionals hear all these mixed messages, what would you tell them?
I would say for certain low-level tasks, yes, but it's not going to replace people writing code. Basically, AI writes bad code, just like we write bad code. But there's nobody really to watch and test the bad code that AI is doing because it's kind of self-testing. I sent an article to our development teams on that same thing. I wish I could remember the name of the article. But it basically was talking about AI writing software. It's worse than humans writing software in some instances. And I'm like, wow. I mean, if you think about it, Microsoft, I just heard Satya Nadella say the other day that like AI is writing 30% of their code. This is Microsoft. And they've got 30%. And you would think, why would they have more than 30%? They're the ones that've got all these co-pilots out there, blah, 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 blah. Because at some point, there's the diminishing returns where it's only going to write so well. It's only going to fix so many things. And you still need to have a person to understand the context of what it's doing. I don't care how great of a prompt engineer you are. You can't prompt for every nuance and everything else.
Right.
So I would tell folks, just read, understand for yourself, get the knowledge for yourself. Just don't go by the hot, what I guess what they call clickbait that would come in and say, hey, this is what's going on and blah, blah, blah. And NVIDIA is going to stand up robots that are going to clean our houses and wash our cars. And all the people in fast food are going to be let go because we're going to have bots cooking our food. Maybe somewhat. Right. But somebody asked me the other day, said, what happens if McDonald's is completely AI? They got bots back there working and the bot goes crazy. What happens? I was like, oh, that's a good question. Probably somebody has thought of that scenario, and they're probably like, no, nobody thinks of those scenarios. They just think about all the success it can bring and how much money they could save. Not, if the bot goes rogue and, something bad happens, then what? Waymo. Like, I love Waymo, except till somebody said, oh, there was a guy stuck in Waymo and the car was going in a circle and he couldn't get out and they couldn't shut the car off. I was like, oh, well, then, there's going to be those instances, but I don't think it's going to be mass scale replacing tons of people. There might be some professions, because even they said, oh, writers are going to be replaced by AI. No, writers are going to learn how to leverage a tool to help them write better or maybe faster or publish themselves versus going to a big publishing house.
So let's go back, Robert. You had mentioned life skills, and I think it's our previous conversation about good managers, good leaders, empathetic leaders that are trying to teach and guide the people under them. So life skills and just kind of background. When you mentioned that, I just perked up and I'm like, oh my God, somebody said life skills. So because as you're aware, in our industry, it's about soft skills and hard skills. And there is this kind of perception that obviously you need the hard skills to be successful in cybersecurity and IT. But I've been pushing back and say, well, yeah, you can have some soft skills is what I would hear. I'm like, no, soft skills, in my opinion, are more important than the hard skills. And so I started changing it up. I don't know if it was in my earlier episodes in the podcast. I'm like, you know what? It's life skills, because if you cannot communicate, you're not going to be successful in anything. In your profession, in your personal life, you can't communicate who you want to date or what you want to do, then you're not going to be able to function in this world. So where did that, I guess, term come from?
It actually came about, probably a few years ago when I really got out of doing the hiring for technical positions. I mean, I could tech somebody out. I could do it all day if I really wanted to. But I got to the point where I would have somebody tech somebody else out. And I was like, the only things that I really care about are skills that are, I guess, transitional, or you can use in multiple places. I'm like, are they going to be a good fit for the team? Because if they're the smartest person in the room and they alienate everybody on the team, that is going to be awful. And yes, I've done that. Yes. And I had the smartest guy in the room that we were like, don't ever send an email again, but we're not going to talk about that. Yes, that was my mistake. I hired that person. And yes, I'll take the ownership of that. But since that incident, I was like, I need somebody who can work in this group, has the same type of personality. And I wouldn't even say it's really a personality. It's really just being a decent and good human being, can communicate well, isn't going to take everything personal, understands that we're all people. We all have bad days, and your bad day, I just might give the brunt of something that happened with you at home or something. I would tell people sometimes, I'm like, look, the amount of anger that person had did not meet the situation. So there's something else going on that is outside of this little issue of a server going down and the person lost their mind. There's something else going on because their fit didn't meet the little thing that's going on here. And that's really what I look for. I look for people who can work independently, people who are respectful, people who it's not about me all the time. It's not a me first. Look, we're part of a team. And people who are willing to, I wouldn't say sacrifice, but are willing to go the extra mile for the folks that they work with. I wouldn't say work is a family, because I tell people all the time, we're not a family. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, if we're a family, your family, you don't fire your brother because they got on your nerves or they didn't take out the trash. I said, we're more like neighbors that live in a community. You have your house, I have my house, we share yard, the fence line, we're respectful of each other. You cut your weeds when they come over in my yard, that kind of thing. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But it's that type of thing where you're neighborly. Hey, do you need some help? Even if you might not know anything about what they're struggling with, you're like, hey, can I help you out? I might not know the answer, but I can probably get somebody who might know the answer. Those types of things that you can't, those don't really develop unless you've lived, you've done life, you've been in different positions. You've experienced things where you're like, I don't want to ask anybody because everybody's here and nobody wants to help anybody. I don't ever want anybody to ever tell me that anybody on my team was not helping. Ever. I tell people all the time, I said, yeah, my nickname is Google because everyone's like, hey, Robert, can you help me with this? Sure. What you got? And even if I don't know, I will say, hey, I know somebody who might be able to help me. Here, I'll connect you to people. Right. There you go.
So moving on to one of the last questions here. What has surprised you the most being in the industry?
Wow. What has surprised me the most? You know what surprised me the most? And I still don't understand the lack of diversity within IT. It's even in the general population of people who work. Like IT has got it's not very diverse. If you think about it for, people of color or women, it's not as diverse as you would think when you look across just work, just other industries. And I was just like, that surprises me, having done this for, I'm going to say almost 30 years. I'm not going to give my age, but almost 30 years. It really hasn't changed. It really hasn't changed. I think in my lifetime, there have been, I think, 2 women who have run IT organizations, 2. And I think one of them was it Dell, HP? Was it HP? I think it was HP. Remember?
So, yeah.
Like 2. And then there was another one. But I think it's been like 2 women have run like big, like Microsoft, the big ones, HP, right. Dell, one of those IBM. Very few. And I don't know what it is. I wish I knew. I wish I could shake my magic 8 ball and say, this is what it is. Because it's not like everybody doesn't have the same opportunity to code or go on YouTube and find all this stuff, given today's the internet and everything else. I just don't know if it's not being pushed, because women or people of color don't see other people in those roles. They don't think that there's a role for them there. I don't know, but that's probably what surprises me the most. I would say it makes me, I wouldn't say sad, but it heartens me that I've been doing this that long and it really hasn't changed.
Right. I'm with you on that, Robert. I think that's one of the kind of driving forces for this podcast in my own little world, just trying to bring voices of, just different people, different perspectives, the untraditional backgrounds, as my guests love to say. But I think everybody, given the opportunity, they can shine in whatever they want to do. It's just giving people that opportunity. And for whatever reason, we tend to be, I think there's a host of different factors at play, some that are pretty visible, some that are just hidden between different layers there. But there is a lot of gatekeeping just with the certifications and school requirements. School,
We
right?
we are IT snobs, and I say that kind of jokingly, but if you think about it, you're like, I'm in IT. I'm above the riffraff. I know stuff.
And the funny thing about that, I was a gatekeeper when I started, when I was in government, because I was able to get into a cyber division within an organization in government. And when I get there, all my colleagues and friends, primarily minorities and women, hey, I want to join that division. I'm like, well, do you have your certifications? Do you have education? And I had none of them when I started. So
Oh no.
I finally, I was one of them. I was a snob, like you just said. But then it started slowly, going into my conscious mind and saying, wait a minute, what's going on here? Seeing the lack of diversity. And I'm like, okay, we need to get better. And obviously I'm 180 degrees from where I started, and just trying to give back at the end of the day there. But Robert, I want to be respectful of your time. I know we're close to time here. Definitely can talk more with you. I think you have a lot of great insight that we only barely scratched the surface on. But one thing that I always end the podcast is with books. I'm an avid reader now. When I was younger, I'm playing catch up now. But now somebody asked me in a pre-call, well, I don't read books. Do you accept podcasts? I'm like, yeah. So now, what book have you recently read or podcasts that you listened to that just resonated with you that you would like to share with the audience?
Oh my gosh. I knew you were going to ask me this. I knew it. I knew it. I'm going to have to pull it up here.
Yeah, it's fine.
I'm definitely going to have to pull it up. So one of my coworkers and I, we basically, around Christmas time, we exchange books. So he got me a book on how America is a hidden empire. And it talks about how we colonized like the Philippines, and, how we have all of these, I would say, like the U.S. Virgin Islands and all of these things, but we reap all the benefits, but they're not really citizens. But we get all the tax breaks and all of the benefits of them being a quote unquote protectorate without them getting to vote and all these other things. So I thought that was really interesting. And then what I just suggested to him was this book that I read. It's called A Theory of Justice by John Rawls. And that was a good book. And just to kind of read a little bit of it, it says a milestone in political and moral philosophy, as groundbreaking as the theories of Bentham and Kant, and arguably the most important intellectual piece of contemporary philosophy. The Guardian said that it really talks about kind of what we're dealing with today. And a lot of justice. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it said that when the founding fathers said all men are created equal, the all didn't include a certain marginalized group of people, because the person who wrote that still had slaves. So you can't say all men are created equal and you still have slaves. So the all was an exclusive all and wasn't an inclusive all. So it really talks about kind of those types of things where, well, we all have a chance to do that. Well, no, there's not all. It's the inclusive all, not the all-encompassing all. It talks about all kinds of things. And I listen to a lot of different podcasts, and it's hard to always just name one because I kind of flip through a bunch of them, and depending on my mood. And one of the ones I listened to the other day, It was just really talking about education and why there is such diversity, and how there are, schools that do really well and schools that don't do really well. And everybody says, the way you frame it to make it look fair is you say, hey, everybody, our taxes pay for our school, right? Everybody thinks taxes pay for your schools, but what kind of taxes pay for your schools? And then when I ask people, they're like, don't know. It's the tax on your home. It's your property tax. So the schools that do really well are in areas where there's homes, high-end homes that have property tax. The ones that don't, you're not paying a ton of property tax on an apartment. And they were like, oh my gosh. I said, but it sounds fair, doesn't it? Because it's your taxes. But it's not the same. It's not equal. Fair and equal are not the same thing. So I'll end it with that before I go on a whole nother rant.
Yeah.
But
no, I love that, Robert. If you can share the titles with me offline, I'll make sure to put those in the show notes.
I will hunt those down. And I'll also hunt down the little link that I talked about around AI and it writing code. I'll also send that to you, because I sent an email to like my whole development team and the team that's working on AI for us, and just said, look at this.
Love that. Robert, I appreciate you jumping on the call. This has been an awesome educational conversation for me, and we'll love to do it again. I know we're local, so we could maybe catch coffee, tea, favorite beverage sometime in the near term.
Oh, definitely. I just thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully this will resonate with somebody else in the industry and they'll be able to glean something from this. So that's my goal. Thank you.